I've been on the hunt for new survival games to play, and it occurred to me that I had one sitting in my Steam backlog that I had never played despite it being about 8 years old at this point: The Long Dark. The Long Dark is an exploration survival game that takes a different approach to survival from most games. Instead of putting you in a relatively easily survived scenario and then increasing the difficulty artificially by throwing lots of enemies at you, it's just you against nature. A geomagnetic disaster has rendered all electronics inert, so you have to survive with only your wits against one of the most hostile environments on Earth. In this video, you're going to see my first few hours of this game as I discover all the challenges in my way. I'll share some advice that might help you out if you're just starting out in The Long Dark, and we'll see how I ultimately met my first end in The Long Dark. We start off having crash landed in the wilderness on a remote Canadian island with absolutely nothing to help us. I quickly found myself near a logging camp where I could start looting, where I found myself a hatchet, which would be extremely helpful in a scenario like this, and when I discovered that the protagonist is voiced by Jennifer Hale, so Commander Shepard will be joining us for this.
Oh, lucky day.
Shepard! Inside, you can see that my character's warmth meter on the bottom left is going up, and you can see I'm already very close to starting to freeze because this game has a very hostile environment. And this would absolutely be my first challenge to deal with in The Long Dark. Inside, I looted myself some herbal tea, a nice scarf, which would definitely at least a little bit help with the cold. I got some quality tools, and I never did actually figure out what those are used for, but I'm pretty sure they're useful. And outside I started my first fire, which you do by pressing 4 and choosing the things you want to make the fire out of, basically. You'll see here that my character kind of isn't getting any hotter, and that's because I didn't discover a very important fire mechanic until later, but in the meantime I did discover how to cook. So I started cooking my first can of peaches, and then ate them, which helped me warm up a little bit, but you can see very quickly I was already starting to freeze again, and my health bar was starting to drop. The cold is no joke in this game. And you'll see here, I decided to break down this branch, which cost me 5 minutes, which caused me to actually lose a lot of health, because the temperature still goes down in that accelerated 5 minutes. I got some sticks for my fire at least. I decided to continue looking around because I refused to actually look up any maps for this game. I wanted to discover it completely naturally, so I just sort of started walking in a direction and hoped I would find something. I eventually stumbled upon a rail car, which I decided to check if I could use as shelter, and it turns out I can, which you can see on that little icon at the top of the screen. Found some ammo, and then started myself another fire and discovered the water purification mechanics, where you can use cans to melt snow. While I was in here, I accidentally turned off the fire, which helped me discover that you can add more fuel to the fire, which is what increases the heat output of your campfire. That actually started to warm me up once it reached about 10 degrees higher. So I had officially discovered how to not freeze to death in The Long Dark, at least conceptually, and boiled my first water. Great success. I then passed some time at the campfire, which allowed my temperature to go up a little bit more before I was going to head out on the rest of my journey. Here I completely squandered everything I did by not noticing that it takes an hour and 30 minutes to gut this deer, completely annihilating all the temperature I had built up by spending an hour outside, and my health bar dropped to 50%. But I did at least have some food now, but I had gained scent that would attract wolves if I wasn't careful. I discovered a trailer outside of a hydro dam, which gave me a skill book, and I searched a car, which gave me some soda, but you can't drive it because everything's broken. Got some more tools, something called stump remover. Here I actually started to put some stuff away in these storage containers so that I could keep moving, and then I decided to sleep the night here, which would restore my temperature because it was warm inside, and would restore my sleep bar, of course. I started my day the same way I do in real life, by downing several cans of horrible sodas, and then stored some more stuff away, which is when I discovered the notes feature, which I can use to remind myself where I've left various things in the world, as well as take notes on other things you may want to take notes on, which I really like these kind of features in games that let you write something in-game, so that I don't have to rely on some notepad document that I've forgotten about. Early in the morning, I head into the hydro dam, which I called the weird scrapyard building because I didn't really notice what it was called when I went there. Inside, you can hear some more of The Long Dark's exceptional sound design. It's very atmospheric and immersive. You can see that darkness is definitely a real threat in the long dark. It is not easy to see when you're going around at all, which I think is a good thing, because light is a very valuable thing that most survival games don't put any priority on. I continued my journey deeper into the hydro dam and found my first dead person. That's fun. He gave me a can of sardines, which are of questionable quality. Found some water and some accelerant, which is of course very useful. And while I was fiddling around in my inventory, the Long Dark decided to play some very dramatic music that I'll just let play for a moment. I always really enjoy good sound design and good music in survival games because so many of them put almost no effort in at all. But after some time in this dam, I found my treasure, the one thing that would be of any use to me out here, a storm lantern, which is a windproof, waterproof light source, and I believe it's also a minimal heat source, but really what you're here for is the light, which would help me explore very much. Which is part of what makes the fact that the Long Dark values light so interesting, because I found something that in most other survival games just wouldn't be of use. I was very excited to have a genuine light source here. I got the achievement for surviving a single day, so I officially survived 24 hours in the Long Dark there, first try, no issues. And this is where I noticed the first kind of like flaw with the Long Dark, which is there's just a whole lot of sitting waiting for campfires to do things, and the other half of the gameplay is walking around trying to find things. If you're someone who likes really action-driven games, I don't think the Long Dark is for you. It's a very slow burn tactical game where it really is about planning and exploring over and over again and discovering all these new things that can help you survive that a little bit longer, rather than, you know, zombies. Here you can see I got injured by what I'm assuming is a bug, because I took fall damage apparently, which sprained my ankle, but maybe it comes from just walking on steep inclines, because it does happen to me again in this life. But I made myself some tea. I discovered how to scrap one of the cloth scarves I'd found, turned that into a bandage, applied it to my sprain, and my leg was fine. But I was still suffering from pain, and at the time I did not have any means of dealing with that pain, so my screen's going to be a little bit blurry while we deal with that. But I had recovered from my first injury with relatively little issue, which I was quite proud of. I saw a cool little fire watchtower as I was searching around, which I decided was going to be where I would spend the night. I searched another train car on the way, but didn't really find anything hugely helpful. I discovered my first wolves as well. I decided to avoid them, and slowly crawled my way up this mountain, collecting my first stones as well, which would be very useful later on. This forestry overlook had a lot of really good stuff visible, and inside there was a bunch of really useful things like ammo, as well as a med kit, food, and even a wooden stove with a bed, and it's pretty warm in there despite the fact it probably wouldn't be warm in an environment like this. But it was a good place to survive, and I definitely made note of its location and stored some stuff here, officially sleeping for the second time. Then I wasted a lot of food and water researching this book, and these books probably are a big contributor to me like failing this run, because I wasted so much time reading books that never contributed anything. I should have been out looking for supplies, but you know, hindsight is 2020. At least I was good with revolvers now, not that I had access to one. You can see I was losing my temperature very, very quickly in this mountain. By the time I got to the bottom, I was pretty much already freezing. I decided to try and sneak past those wolves I had saw the other day, and I discovered the Mystery Lake location. Here I found a very, very useful cabin. This place was pretty good. It was warm, it had an extra storm lantern in it, it had skill books, it had a workbench, it had 2 stoves, a cooking pot, a jacket, and of course a workbench and a bed, which was really good stuff. So I decided to make this kind of a main hub of my survival for the rest of the playthrough, which may have been a mistake, because I think the fact that I stuck around here resulted in me running out of supplies, and that gave me a lot of problems later on. But in the meantime, I went down a trail next to the lake to discover some of the buildings on the other end, discovered a very loud wolf, and a cave that actually provided shelter, which would be useful to know about. Inside these cabins, I didn't find anything amazingly helpful, but I did find useful supplies like food and things I could burn for fire, which is going to be the main concern. I also found the most Canadian hat alive. I also took a nap, because why not? After looting all the cabins on that side of the lake, I decided to go home, and it was nighttime, so I had to use my oil lamp. I made myself a cup of herbal tea and some pork and beans. After sleeping, I had survived 2 days and 19 hours. which was a solid start. The wolves were gone from the actual lake on that morning, so I decided to go and discover the fishing huts in the middle and even made my own ice fishing hole, but obviously I have no fishing equipment, so that was a waste of time. Found a can of condensed milk, which was a lot of calories, and got into my first conflict with a wolf. Turns out if you just aim a rock at them, they at least sometimes run away, so that went quite well for me. I also wasted more time researching a book here, which would not benefit me in any way, especially since it only gave me half a level of rifle skill. I then discovered the scoreboard and went to bed. Jennifer Hale gave us a fantastic nugget of wisdom.
That guy who drank his own pee doesn't seem so crazy right now.
And I discovered a really, really bad blizzard right at the time I had discovered how you could use charcoal to make a map. And obviously you can't do that when there's a blizzard, so I would have to wait. A few hours later when the blizzard passed, I did my first survey with charcoal, which discovered some of the map for me, which was really useful. I got into another fight with a wolf, and this guy kind of just didn't listen to the fact that I had a rock, so I had to smack him with my axe. And this is where things start going really wrong for me. I decided that I should get my pound of flesh and chase this wolf into the woods, following its blood and tracks for like an hour. Eventually, though, those tracks ran cold, and I was just sitting in the middle of a lake, ice cold myself, with no wolf meat to show for it. It was a complete waste of time to go after that wolf. So I set up a fire to warm myself up. After warming myself up a little bit, I saw some rabbits who I decided to try and hunt down. The rock throwing is not the most intuitive thing. I'm sure it's very easy if you've got a couple hundred hours in this game, but I was nowhere near hitting these damn things. I got into another fight with a wolf, and this is probably the ceiling blow, if you like. You can see my health bar now is just extremely low, and I did not immediately decide to run home and try and heal that. I continued exploring with an extremely low health bar, but I did hit my first rabbit, only to discover that doesn't kill them, and it just got up and ran away, which was funny. I hit it again, and then I cradled it in my arms, and absolutely nothing happened to this rabbit. So, with absolutely nothing happening to this rabbit, I had managed to find myself some meat and decided it would probably be best to start running home. And this is where I get absolutely pranked by the long dark. You see this wolf? I scare him away with my rocks, and then I foolishly decide to run around a corner only to discover the wolf had a friend who insta-kills me because I don't have enough health to survive the exchange. And that's my first death in the long dark. Getting pranked by numbers. And I discovered the logs. So yeah, that was my first death in the long dark. It was really fun exploring this world with like no guidance at all. Just trying to find things, and I realized in retrospect, like I really needed to keep moving, and I really needed to prioritize healing over like chasing resources. You know, in most other survival games, you could get away with just hunting down a wolf for an hour of your day and nothing would really happen of it, but this game's very, very brutal, and it will kill you very quickly. And it was a multitude of factors, not just the wolf. The environment and me using my time poorly led to me freezing, which made me more susceptible to the wolves, of course. So I got greedy. I was punished for being stupid, and I actually like that. It wasn't like, oh, I lost a fight with a zombie. I was actively just stupid, and it got me killed. And I think that that's really fun for a survival game. It's a refreshing change of pace, that it's not a velociraptor ripping my head off on a beach, and it's not a zombie punching me in the face. It was me. It was me that got me killed, which is extremely realistic. That's what would probably happen to a lot of people in a survival scenario. They would run out of supplies, or they would not manage their health well enough, and they would get ripped apart by wolves because they didn't think that wolves would move in a group. That thing that wolves are known to do. I think there is some criticism so far from playing it though. Like 80% of this game's content feels like it's walking around and trying to start fires, which isn't the most exhilarating gameplay, but I do enjoy it as like a slow burn tactical experience. This isn't a game for people who are driven by action. If you try and play this like an action game, you'll get ripped to shreds and you'll be like, this is so shit. But as like a real test of your survival skills and like as a real exploration game, this is so far very, very good. And I'm very impressed with its dedication to being a survival game and not caving to like trying to be more widely appealing and more like action heavy. They really just let survival breathe, and it's a really good result. So yeah, I look forward to trying another run through and seeing how far I can get next time by, you know, going to the right locations and having more memory. I'm not going to look up much guides on this game. I'm not going to look up many maps. I'm just going to let like the sort of almost like roguelike experience where you keep going back again and again and again and get further and further every time be the core of this game. Because a lot of survival games, I think they do rely on the idea that all you're doing is surviving, but they don't make it difficult to survive. I'm thinking of something like Project Zomboid or Vane, where there's a lot of just survival gameplay, but it's exceptionally easy to survive. And those games really struggle to keep me interested long term, but this really puts the environmental hazard at the forefront, which I find to be very, very appealing. So yeah, that was my first look at The Long Dark. I imagine I'm way behind on everybody because this game came out years ago. I've been meaning to play it for literally 2 years and I just never got around to it, and I'm quite impressed. So yeah, let me know if you want to see more Long Dark content. Let me know if you're going to try it. Tell me the story of your first death in The Long Dark if you can remember it. If you want to see more survival game content, check out this video where I go over the 10 upcoming survival games that I'm most excited about in 2026. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Shepard.
Grunt.
Shepard.
Rex.
Commander Shepard. Shepard.
Rex.
Shepard. Shepard. Shepard.